We are live. Live on a Monday. Is anybody out there? I don't know. No. We're speaking into the void. Good morning, good day, Zardos. Hello, hello. It is definitely Monday. Color settings are weird. I don't know why. It happens every day, it seems like. Yeah, a lot of Games Workshop dumping a lot of Warhammer news on us this morning. Very exciting. Exciting time to be alive, right? So that's cool. I picked up on Saturday my pre-orders. So I have new things to open and look at on Wednesday. My Primaris Chaplain on a bike. Of course, we found out this morning there's a new non-Primaris Chaplain Terminator armor coming out later at the end of this month for Warhammer Day. I've already sent a message out to my local store asking if they're going to have it. My local non-Warhammer store. So just that one. This, which I just shared, some amazing hobbyist did this up as Mario and Luigi, which is pretty silly, but did an incredible job, especially with the painting. I will just be doing the standard, except I'm going to try to figure out if there's a way to... There are two different weapon options, so I'm going to try to figure out how I can... where is it? This side. If there's some way I can build this shield piece where I can switch the weapons back and forth. I don't know if that's going to be possible or easy, but I'll look. And then what are these things? Also has two weapon options. Might be easier to magnetize this one. It looks like if they just magnetize where the weapon fits into the front panel, I think that should work. We'll see. I've already seen some people doing really cool stuff with this model too. Either kit bashing the figure separately, so he just stands there and making it a remote weapon, or building this into the back of the relatively new impulsor vehicle to turn the vehicle into like more of a tank. So anyway, things for another day, specifically Wednesday. But yes. Yeah, I don't think it probably doesn't come with all of the parts to make two. Well, anyway, we'll find out on Wednesday when we open it up and play with all of the pieces and look at the sprues. So if you missed it on this weekend, so Saturday night we had a very interesting, very fun stream over on Emma's channel. It was Emma's Homebuddies bar trivia night. Things got interesting. Look, you go into a trivia night, you've got a team. It's not guaranteed that your team is going to know some of the categories. And there were definitely entire categories where our team just didn't know things. And it happens. I'm certainly not complaining. And as you saw if you were there, we certainly made the best of it and had fun with it. Even awarded a bunch of pity points. Let's say comedy points by Emma, which was really funny and not needed, but it was great. So yes, we had a good time, even if we had no chance of coming in anything but dead last. I love Pandar's graph of his Venn diagram. Emma's interests and Scott's team's interests, and they weren't even close. But again, that's how it goes. Next time I will have a new team, so we'll see what can happen then. It could be anybody's game next time. All right. let us... So it is Monday, which means it is Mythology Monday. Excuse me. There we go. All right. So I'm going to continue reading Ovid's Metamorphoses. If not for you, then for me, because I like it. We do not have a lot of people on right now. I don't know. Is Hyper streaming? Usually when I have very few people, it's because Hyper is on with their travels, which is fine. It is very interesting what they are doing. But I am going to continue. So we are in a section of Ovid's Metamorphoses that is specifically dealing with humans who get punished by the gods for challenging them. And they get turned into all sorts of awful things. Horrible punishments for humans. So we read about Arachne turned into a spider by Minerva for challenging her in a weaving contest. And again, Arachne's weaving was perfect. But she's punished because she challenged the goddess. So next, let's see. Ooh, the story of Niobe. Squirrel. There will be no Pig Latin this morning on this. These are important stories we need to read. Not like that silly Dune stuff. So the story of Niobe. Does anybody know the story of Niobe? Have you ever heard this one before? So once, long ago, before her marriage, Niobe had known Arachne when the two girls were together in the Maeonian country. But the warning of deference to the gods, restraint of language, was lost on Niobe. Too many things had made her proud. So again, we see pride, which always leads to bad things, at least for humans. Too many things had made her proud. Her royal husband's talent, high birth, the power of place, and most of all, her children made her proud. She would have been happiest of all mothers had she only not thought herself the happiest. And Manto, Tiresias' daughter, whose prophetic vision could see the things to come, had tried to tell her, had gone through all the streets of Thebes, proclaiming, "Women of Thebes, adore Latona's temple, bring prayers and incense to her and her children, wreathe laurel in your hair, Latona's orders I bring her message." And they were obedient, the women of Thebes, with laurel for the temples, and incense for the altar flame, and prayer. Well, Zardoz, you are not wrong. But here comes Niobe, with a crowd about her, streaming along and wonderful to look at, in Phrygian robes of gold, and beautiful in anger, beautiful if ever anger lets one be beautiful. Her lovely head is tossed back in a gesture of pride, the hair falling to either side, and she stops, holds herself very tall, lets her proud eyes take in the scene. "Oh, citizens, what madness takes hold of you?" she challenges. "Do you really prefer those gods whom you have only heard of to those you see? Why is Latona worshipped over her altars, and my own lack incense? My father is Tantalus, the only mortal ever permitted to touch the heavenly table where the gods feast. My mother is a sister of the Pleiades. Atlas, who carries heaven on his great shoulders, is one grandsire, Jove the other one. And Jove is my husband's father." So she's relating all of her ancestry. She's descended from gods. Her husband's descended from gods. But again, we hear that word pride and proud a bunch of times leading into this. "The Phrygians bow before me. I am queen of Cadmus's royal house and the walls of Thebes, built by the magic of my husband's music, and the folk of Thebes accord us royal homage. Wherever I turn my eyes, I look on richness, tremendous, vast. As for my own appearance, it is worthy of a goddess. To all this count also 7 sons and 7 daughters. Their wives to be and husbands ask me therefore what cause I have for pride, and do not dare prefer Latona to me, this Latona, daughter of Coeus, whoever he is, Latona to whom the whole wide world one time would give no place to bear her children in. Not heaven, nor earth, nor sea was hospitable to her." "This goddess of yours, only a wretched island, Delos, like her a wanderer, a vagrant. By sea as she by land took pity on her, gave her a place at last. How feeble that foundation. So there she was, a mother of 2 children. I have 7 times as many. I am happy, who can deny it? And I shall be happy, who dares to doubt it? My abundance saves me. I am too great for fortune's power to injure. Suppose she takes much from me, there is more she will have to leave me still. Yikes. Again, like over and over, things that you don't want to be saying. I have so much bounty that even if fortune were to rob me of some of it, I'd still have plenty left. Yeah. Imagine it. Suppose some of the population of my children were taken from me. Even so, could I be so reduced as she is, that Latona, childless, or might as well be with that mob of only 2 around her? Go, you foolish people. There has been enough of this. Remove those laurels out of your hair. Stop making sacrifices. Be quick about it. So not only is she gloating and saying how great she is because she's high-born, she's descended from gods, she's super rich, she has 14 children, but she's even telling people to stop worshiping the gods. Not smart. And the one, let me write this out. So she's talking about the goddess Latona, who is correspondent to the Greek Leto. They took off the laurel, they left the rites unfinished, but no orders could halt their silent praise and adoration. Latona, a goddess angered, called her children to her on Cynthus. Here I am, your mother, proud of your birth, deferring to no goddess except the Queen of Heaven. Doubt has risen that I am a goddess, and in all the ages worship will be denied Latona's altars, unless my children aid me. What is worse, insult heaps upon injury. Niobe dares to think her children better than mine. She calls me childless. The word will be a curse upon her. Thank you for the follow, Revival Dude. As reckless in her talking as her father. There was more she would have added, prayers, entreaties, but her son said, enough. The longer we listen, the later we punish. And her daughter said, enough. And, veiled in cloud, the 2 came gliding down to the citadel. I like that. The longer we listen, the later we punish. That's pretty good. Outside the walls lay a wide plain as hard almost as pavement, from the beat of galloping hooves and rolling chariots. There some of Niobe's 7 sons were riding on crimson-colored saddlecloths, the reins, the bridles heavy with gold. So now we're going to get, Ovid's going to show off and give us all of the names of all of these children. They're all doing different things. They're hanging out. They're having fun. Ismenus, leaning inward, pulling hard on the foaming bit to make a turn, screamed out in sudden agony. Let fall the reins, an arrow in his heart, sank slowly sideways over the horse's shoulder to the ground. And Sipylus, his brother, heard the quiver rattle in empty air and gave full rein, turned on all possible speed as a ship's master, conscious of a storm coming out. At sight of a cloud, crowds on all sail, takes every possible breeze to help his scudding home. He gave full rein, drove fast in flight, but the arrow drove much faster. The shaft struck quivering in his neck. The barb came through at the front of his throat. Still leaning forward, he made a headlong dive over the mane. Between the galloping legs and the ground took the stain of his warm life blood. Thadamus and Tantalus, named for his mother's father, were winding in their morning's exercise and wrestling, and the shining bodies strained in close embrace and hold, and a sped arrow fixed them in that embrace and hold. As one they groaned, they writhed, and the eyes whitened, and the last breath left their bodies. And Alphenor, watching them die, came running up to help them, to untangle the cold limbs. In that devotion, Alphenor fell. Apollo's arrow pierced him through chest and lungs, and when he pulled the shaft out of the wound, part of the lungs came with it, and the blood followed. And the young Damasthicon was hit behind the knee, and as the hand reached down to pull the arrow out, another, more accurate, more swift, struck through the throat, emerged with feathers dyed a different color. There was only one left now, Ilionis, who cried out in vain to pray, "Spare me, O gods, all of you, spare me!" He did not seem to know he need not pray to all of them. Apollo was moved, a little too late, it seemed, for pity, for the arrow had left the bowstring. Still, that wound was the most merciful. Rumor of the trouble, the grief and lamentation of the people, the tears of her own friends informed the mother of the doom that struck so suddenly. Amphion, the husband and the father, had driven the steel to his own heart, at one blow ending sorrow and life together. So Leto or Latona is the mother of Apollo. And Diana here in Roman mythology. Artemis. And both Apollo and Artemis are archer gods. So Apollo comes down and just starts shooting arrows into all of the sons of Niobe. Niobe, bewildered that all of this could happen, was Niobe. Angry that gods could dare this much, that gods had power to execute their daring. A different woman, this Niobe, from the woman who so lately had driven the people from Latona's altar, striding the streets with head tossed back and haughty and hated even by her friends. But now, a woman even her enemies might pity. So it actually turned out she didn't have friends. On the cold bodies she flung herself. She gave them the final kisses, gave them with no order, no thought of protocol, and from them lifted her arms, bruised by the strain of that embracing, and cried to heaven, "O cruel Latona, feed, feed, batten on my sorrow, feed the heart whose passion is for bloodshed, feed it full. My 7 sons are gone, and I have died a 7-fold death. Exult, be hateful, triumph, you are the winner." Winner, did I say? Ha! Wretched as I am, I have more left me than you in all your blessedness. So many are dead, and still I win. Come on, Niobe, really? And the bow made its twanging sound in the air, and all were frightened. Not Niobe, whose very loss had made her beside herself with boldness. In black dresses, the sisters, with their hair let down, were standing before the barrows where their brothers lay, and one of the girls bent over to pull an arrow out of the body, and herself sank down dead, face to face with brother, and a second offered her mother comfort, and all of a sudden ceased being a comfort, or trying to, jaw and lips set tight to keep the last breath from escaping. And a third daughter tried escape, and fell running, and a fourth tripped over the runner and died beside her sister. One tried hiding, one tried being brave in the open, but both trembled, were shaken, died. They were all gone but one, the last one, whom the mother tried to cover with body bending over and robes widespread to make some kind of shelter. "Leave me this one, the littlest one of all my many children. Leave me the littlest one." But while she prayed, the littlest one was dying. So she sat there, a childless woman among her sons, her daughters, beside her husband, and never moved. No air lifted her hair. The color of her features was waxen, and her eyes were fixed and staring. The picture of utter grief, and in the picture, no sign of life at all. The tongue was frozen to the roof of the mouth. No pulse beat in the veins. Neck could not bend, nor arms be moved, nor feet go back or forward, and the vitals hardened to rock. But still she weeps, and she is carried, caught up in a whirlwind, to her native mountains, where, on a summit, a queen deposed, she rests, still weeping. Even to this day the marble trickles with tears. So yes, every single one of her children is murdered by the gods. Apollo and Diana kill every single one of them, and Niobe is left. She's in such grief, she freezes in place. All she can do is cry, and she turns into a rock. in theory, there's some famous rock that this references from the ancient world, a rock where that water came through the rock, so it looked like it was crying. Yeah, yeah, Zardoz, not a good strategy when dealing with the gods. So yes, that is the story of Niobe. And let's see, we're going to jump ahead a little bit here. Because we have a couple of like stories embedded within other stories. Okay, so that story was ended. Somebody began another about that satyr whom Latona's son surpassed at playing the flute and punished sorely. Antagonizing the gods doesn't work. Well, I know, surprise, right? So here, this one's super brief, but it's a good one. And it's very short. About that satyr. So a satyr is what people usually think of with regards to the god Pan. So it's humanoid, but with features of a goat. Sometimes some other animals, usually goat, like from the waist down, goat horns, sometimes ears. It depends on the specific description and the artist, if so. Okay, about that satyr whom Latona's son, Apollo, surpassed at playing the flute and punished sorely, flaying him, so all the skin left his body. So he was one great wound, with the blood flowing, the nerves exposed, veins with no cover of skin over their beating surface, lungs and entrails visible as they functioned. The country people, the woodland gods, the fauns, his brother satyrs, the nymphs, and even Olympus, whom he loved through all his agony, all wept for him, with every shepherd looking after his flocks along those mountainsides. The fruitful earth drank in those tears and turned them into water, and sent them forth to air again, a rill, a stream, the clearest of all the running Phrygian rivers, named Marsyas for the victim. So yeah, so there's this satyr named Marsyas, or satyr, and he too, we don't get the full story here, just that brief mention, but he was really good at playing the flute, and he boasted that he was better than Apollo, who now Apollo is, among his many spheres of influence, Apollo is a god of music, typically playing the lyre, and again, challenged the god about his musicianship. Apollo comes down. Apollo is not happy, strings up this poor fellow Marsyas, and literally peels all of his skin off. And we get some references here and in other places that this is so horrific that even the other gods and other nymphs and things are like, you did what? That's not cool. And so again, yeah, he's strung up, and like you can see his organs working because he has no skin anymore. And all of that weeping then gets turned into another river. But yeah, Marsyas is pretty bad. Let's see. So then it wraps up this story, and okay, so then we're gonna pick up at the end of this larger story to go into the story of Tereus, Procne, and Philomela. So it goes back a little bit with Pelops. And let's see. Okay, so the neighboring rulers came, and the neighboring cities sent their kings to offer consolation. Argos, Sparta, Mycenae, Corinth, fertile Orchomenos, Calydon, that was before Diana's anger, Messene, Patre, Pylos, and many others, all except Athens. But Athens was in trouble, with war at her gates, barbarian invasion from over the seas, and could not send a mission. Who would believe it? So great was her own sorrow. But Tereus, king of Thrace, had sent an army to bring the town relief, to lift the siege. And Tereus's name was famous, a great conqueror, and he was rich, and strong in men, descended from Mars. So Pandion, king of Athens, made him a son as well as an ally, joining his daughter Procne to Tereus in marriage. Okay, so Athens is in trouble. The nearby, relatively nearby kingdom of Thrace sends help. Thrace is ruled by King Tereus. And so to thank him, the king of Athens joins Tereus in marriage to his daughter Procne. Okay. The omens, though, were baleful. Neither Juno nor Hymen nor the Graces blessed the marriage. The Furies swung, or maybe brandished torches snatched from a funeral. The Furies lighted the bridal bed, and above the bridal chamber brooded the evil hoot owl. With such omens Tereus and Procne married. With such omens the bride and bridegroom soon were father and mother. And Thrace rejoiced, and they rejoiced and offered thanks to the gods, making the day of marriage, the day of Itys's birth, both festal days. People never know, it seems. Oof. So yes, they have a young child named Itys. Yeah, another great line. People never know, it seems. 5 years went by, and Procne asked a favor of her husband. My lord, if any ways of mine have been a source of satisfaction to my husband, let me go see my sister, or let her come to visit us, with a promise to her father of a quick return. The sight of my dear sister would be the finest present you could give me. So Tereus promptly had the ship made ready, sailed off to Athens, landed at Piraeus, found Pandion, and they joined hands in greeting and wished each other well, and Tereus started to explain the reasons of his coming there, his wife's request, and the expected promise of a stay not over long, and as they chatted, here Philomela came, in rich apparel, in richer grace, as lovely as the naiads, as lovely as the dryads of the woodlands, as lovely, rather, as they would be, if only they had such clothes as hers, and such a bearing. And Tereus, looking at her, and in that moment took fire, as ripe grain burns, or dry leaves burn, or hay stored in the hay-mow. And this tribute she well deserved, but there were other reasons. He was a passionate man, and all the Thracians are all too quick at loving. A double fire burnt in him, his own passion and his nation's. I love how they're blaming his lust for his wife's sister on, oh, well, everybody from that town is super passionate. Okay. So it's like a genetic thing? So yes. So his first impulse was to bribe her guardians, corrupt her faithful nurse, or by rich presents, even if it cost him all his kingdom, win her or take her, and defend what he had taken by violent war. In that unbridled passion there was nothing he would not dare, with the flame bursting out of his breast. Delay, delay! He suffered, was all too eager, and when he spoke for Procne, spoke for himself. Love made him eloquent. If he went too far, he would lay the blame on Procne, saying she wished it so, and he added tears, as if the tears were shed at her instructions. So again, he's saying, yes, she really needs to come home. Procne really wants to see her and wants to have her come for a visit. The hearts of men have such blind darkness in them. Tereus seems a most devoted husband, so eager to please Procne, and wins praises, the secret crime contriver. Philomela is eager to go, wants the same thing, or seems to, wheedles her father and fondles him and coaxes and argues how much good it will do them both, her sister and herself, little does she know, if she can make the visit. And Tereus, watching, sees beyond what he sees. She is in his arms. That is not her father whom her arms go around, nor her father she is kissing. Everything is fuel to his fire. He would like to be her father at that moment, and if he were, he would be as wicked a father as he is a husband. So Pandion says yes, and Philomela, poor girl, is happy and thanks him. Both his daughters, she thinks, have won. They are losers, both his daughters. How was she to know? Did we lose our troll? I figured not engaging him would probably just let him. Yeah, it looks like he's. I mean, hey, trolls are welcome if they are interested in listening to stories. And the sun's horses swung low to the west, and there was a great banquet, feasting, and wine in golden cups, then slumber. And Tereus went to bed, and did not slumber, in heat for Philomela, thinking of her, the way she looked, the way she moved, her gestures, her visible charms, and what he has not seen, or not yet seen, at least he can imagine, and does, and feeds his fires, and cannot slumber. And morning came, and the old king and the younger shook hands before the leaving, and the older spoke through his tears, "Dear son, in all devotion, since both the sisters wish it, and since you appear to share your wish." Yeah, that's true. Welcome, Darrow. Coming in with the clutch dad jokes. Love it. Yeah, so they're about to leave, and the poor old king, who is about to have a much worse life. "Dear son, in all devotion, since both the sisters wish it, and since you appear to share their wish, I trust her to you. I beg you, by your honor and our kinship, protect her with a father's love, and send her safe home as soon as may be, the sweet comfort of my declining years." Oh, he's so old. "However brief her visit, it will seem to me a long one. And you, my Philomela, if you love me, come home to me soon." And saying so, he kissed her with his last plea, and wept, and hands were joined to bind the agreement. And one thing more, he told them, "Give all my love to Procne and to Itys." And his voice broke, and underneath his sorrow, foreboding lay. And the painted ship went sailing over the sea, and Tereus, the savage, knowing that he had won her, having as a passenger his heart's desire, exults, can wait no more, or almost cannot wait, and looks her over the way an eagle does, who is brought home to his high nest, hooked by the cruel talons, the prey, still warm, still living, the poor captive helpless before the captor's gloating gaze. And now the voyage ended, and the vessel was worn from travel, and they came stepping down to their own shores, and Tereus dragged her with him to the deep woods, to some ramshackle building dark in that darkness, and he shut her in there, pale, trembling, fearing everything, and asking where was her sister. And he told her then what he was going to do, and straightway did it, raped her, a virgin, all alone, and calling for her father, for her sister, but most often for the great gods. In vain. She shook and trembled as a frightened lamb which a grey wolf has mangled and cast aside. Poor creature, to a safety it cannot quite believe. She is like a dove with her own blood all over her feathers, fearing the talons have pierced and left her. Soon as sense comes back, she tears her loosened hair, she beats her breast, wild as a woman in mourning, crying, "O wicked deed, O cruel monster, barbarian, savage, were my father's orders nothing to you? His tears, my sister's love, my own virginity, the bonds of marriage? Now it is all confused, mixed up. I am my sister's rival, a second-class wife, and you, for better or worse, the husband of two women, Procne, my enemy now, at least she should be. Why not have been my murderer? That crime would have been cleaner. Have no treachery in it, and I an innocent ghost. If those on high behold these things, if there are any gods, if anything is left, not lost as I am, what punishment you will pay me, late or soon. Now that I have no shame, I will proclaim it. Given the chance, I will go where people are. Tell everybody. If you shut me here, I will move the very woods and rocks to pity. The air of heaven will hear, and any god, if there is any god in heaven, will hear me." So yes, she's quite distraught. She's basically saying, F you to the gods, if you're even there, having let this happen and not releasing me or saving me. The words had their effect. The cruel king was moved to a fierce anger to equal fear. The double drive of fear and anger drove him to draw the sword, to catch her by the hair, to pull the head back, tie the arms behind her. And Philomela, at the sight of the blade, was happy, filled with hope, the thought of death most welcome. Her throat was ready for the stroke. But Tereus did not kill her. He seized her tongue with pincers, though it cried out against the outrage, babbled and made a sound something like "Father," till the sword cut it out. The mangled root quivered, the severed tongue along the ground lay quivering, making a little murmur, jerking and twitching the way a serpent does run over by a wheel, and with its dying movement came to its mistress's feet. And even then, it seems too much to believe, even then Tereus took her, and took her again, the injured body still giving satisfaction to his lust. Could have given a content warning before this one. Sorry, folks. This is one of the more brutal of the stories. And also, again, we talked about this before, but we have aspects in Ovid's Metamorphoses that are definitely like, here's like a horror movie scene. And we have it here when Tereus cuts out Philomela's tongue. It drops on the ground. It's squirming along the floor. It makes its own sounds, which is interesting. Yes, and then he continues to be the most horrible person. And after that, Tereus went on to Procne, and Procne asked, of course, about her sister, asked where she was. And Tereus, with a groan, lamented, wept, and told some kind of story, saying that she was dead, oh, most convincing with all his show of sorrow. Therefore Procne tore from her shoulders the robe with golden border, put on a plain black, and built a tomb to honor the spirit of her sister, and brought gifts as funeral offerings to the fictive ghost, mourning a fate that should have been resented rather than mourned for. And a year went by, and what of Philomela? Guarded against flight, stone blocks around her cottage, no power of speech to help her tell her wrongs. Her grief has taught her sharpness of wit, and cunning comes in trouble. She had a loom to work with, and with purple on a white background wove her story in and out, and when it was finished, gave it to one old woman with signs and gestures to take it to the queen. So it was taken, unrolled, and understood. Procne said nothing. What could she say? Grief choked her utterance, passion her sense of outrage. There was no room for tears, but for confusion only, and vengeance. But something must be done, and in a hurry. So Philomela, the only thing she has to do locked up in this cottage is she has a loom to work with, and she weaves a tapestry of her own story, what had happened, and she gives it to an old woman. Theoretically, the old woman is taking care of things, housekeeper, bringing food, whatever, and has her bring it to the queen, Procne, who unrolls it and sees what has happened to her sister. Charlie says there's a lot of brutality in most of the ancient stories. Kind of shows what a brutal world was. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and again, so many ancient stories are about the potential breakdowns of relationships between husbands and wives, parents and children, kings and queens, the kings of neighboring villages, towns, societies, whatever it is. And yes, about how the gods are watching, usually, over these kinds of relationships. And if things are done wrong, there will be punishment. And there are reasons why you need to preserve relationships and be nice to people, basically. Hello. We're in the middle of the Tereus, Procne, and Philomela story, and it is a doozy. So Procne now knows what has happened to her sister, that her husband has kidnapped her, locked her up, cut out her tongue. Yeah, all these horrible things. It was the time when all excuse me. It was the time when all the Thracian mothers held festival for Bacchus, and the night shared in their secrets. Hold on a second. Rhodope by night resounded as the brazen cymbals clashed, and so by night the queen went from her palace, armed for the rites of Bacchus, in all the dress of frenzy, trailing vines for headdress, deer skin down the left side, and a spear over the shoulder. So, swiftly through the forest with attendants, comrades and worshippers and throngs, and driven by madness, terrible in rage and anger, went Procne, went to the Bacchanal, and came at last to the hidden cottage, came there shrieking, "Hail, Bacchus!" broke the doors in, found her sister, dressed her like all the others, hid her face with ivy leaves, and dragged her on, and brought her home to the palace. And when Philomela saw where she was, she trembled and grew pale as death, and Procne found her a place, took off the Bacchic trappings, and uncovered her sister's features, white with shame, and took her into her arms. But Philomela could not so much as lift her eyes to face her sister whom she knew she had wronged. So she's upset because technically she slept with her sister's husband, even though he raped her. Yeah. She kept her gaze on the ground, longing with all her heart to have the power to call the gods to witness. It was not her fault, but something forced upon her. She tried to say so with her hands, and Procne, bursting, could not restrain her wrath. She scolded her sister's weeping. "This is no time," she told her, "for tears, but for the sword, for something stronger than sword, if you have any such weapon on you. I am prepared for any crime, my sister, to burn the palace, and into the flaming ruin hurl Tereus, the author of our evils. I would cut out his tongue, his eyes, cut off the parts which brought you shame, inflict 1,000 wounds on his guilty soul. I am prepared for some great act of boldness, but what it is, I do not know. I wish I did." So, up until this point, we feel rage for Tereus, we feel pity for Procne and Philomela. But the story is not over. So she's looking around, Procne's looking around. How can I get revenge? How can I punish my husband for doing this? The answer came to her as her son came in, young Itys. She looked at him with pitiless eyes. She thought, how like his father he is. That was enough. She knew now what she had to do, all burning with rage inside her. But when the little fellow came close and put both arms around his mother and kissed her in appealing, boyish fashion, she was moved to tenderness against her will. Her eyes filled up with tears. Her purpose wavered. She knew it, and she looked at Philomela, no more at Itys, than one to the other, saying, "And why should one make pretty speeches, the other be dumb, and ravish tongue unable to tell of ravish? Since he calls me mother, why does she not say sister? Whose wife are you, daughter of Pandion? Will you disgrace him, your husband, Tereus? But devotion to him is a worse crime." Without more words, a tigress with a young fawn, she dragged the youngster with her to a dark corner somewhere in the palace, and Itys, who seemed to see his doom approaching, screamed and held out his hands with "Mother, mother," and tried to put his little arms around her, but she, with never a change in her expression, drove the knife home, through breast, through side, one wound, enough to kill him, but she made another, cutting the throat, and they cut up the body, still living, still keeping something of the spirit, and part of the flesh leaped in the boiling kettles, part hissed on turning skewers, and the room dripped blood. And this was the feast they served to Tereus, who did not know For the queen made up some story about a ritual meal for husbands only, which even servants might not watch. High in the chair sat Tereus, proud and feasting, almost greedy on the flesh of his own flesh. And in the darkness of mind he calls, "Bring Itys here!" And Procne cannot conceal her cruel joy. She is eager to be the herald of her bloody murder. "He has come in," she answers. And he looks around, asks where the boy is, asks again, "Keep calling." And Philomela, with hair all bloody, springs at him and hurls the bloody head of Itys full in his father's face. There was no time ever when she would rather have had the use of her tongue, the power to speak, to express her full rejoicing. With a great cry, he turns the table over, summons the snaky furies from their valley deep in the pit of Styx. Now, if he could, if only he could, he would open up his own belly, eject the terrible feast. All he can do is weep, call himself the pitiful resting place of his dear son. Ugh. He draws his sword, pursues them, both Pandion's daughters. They went flying from him as if they were on wings. They were on wings! One flew to the woods, the other to the rooftop, and even so the red marks of the murder stayed on their breasts. The feathers were blood-colored. Tereus, swift in grief and lust for vengeance, himself becomes a bird. A stiff crest rises upon his head, and a huge beak juts forward, not too unlike a sword. He is the hoopoe, the bird who looks like war. Oof. And then it picks up and talks a little bit about Pandion. Yikes. Oh, and so Philomela and Procne are turned into the nightingale and the sparrow. Those are those birds. And Tereus into the hoopoe, which, if you've never heard of it, is spelled like that. Yeah, so that's a famous story, and one in just like the worst, just like the worst things ever in that story, as you saw. Not a good bedtime story for people. And yes, Demon Light, the child Itys was innocent and was just a victim in this of the awful, insane situation that came upon them. But again, it's Metamorphoses, so at the end we have people changing into things, and we get new birds and sort of justifications for why nightingales and sparrows might have some red on them, and the hoopoe just looks like a vicious attacking bird. I don't know exactly what a hoopoe looks like. See if I can find a picture. Hoopoe. Yes, it is a bird. It doesn't look particularly vicious, I guess, but sure. Let me grab a picture. Come on, picture. Yeah, they look cute. They're just kind of silly. Apparently the ancient people thought these looked, I mean, that beak it looks pretty pokey. Like a war crest on its head, I guess. Anyway. We'll leave that there as we go on. So that was the end of book 6. So moving into book 7, we pick up with some longer stories, and we're going to hear about the story of Jason and Medea. Now, I'm going to skip through this mostly because we talked about the Argonautica. So I don't know that we need to go through all of this and hear the same stories told in a different way. Let me just see if there's anything specific. Yeah, it mostly jumps to the end about Medea helping Jason get the fleece, and then him turning on her and her being mad. So again, we know all of that. There is some cool stuff. We get a lot of descriptions of Medea's magic in here, though, which is kind of great. So Jason is doing the stuff. He sows the seeds. He fights the dudes who pop up out of the ground. One task was left: to put to sleep the dragon who never sleeps, the monster with the crest, the triple tongue, the crooked fangs, the guardian of the golden tree. And Jason sprinkled on him juice from Lethean herbs, chanting 3 times words that bring quiet slumber, and put to rest most angry seas, and stop swift flowing rivers. Then sleep came into those eyes, which never before had known of sleep, and Jason won the spoil of gold. Yes. So he gets the fleece, he wins. Jason's not the best guy. So here, now, not to get into like numerology stuff, but numbers are obviously very important. Numbers were a big deal to a lot of ancient cultures. Numbers had symbolism. We think of the Bible and all the numbers, 40 days, 40 nights, a lot of things. They're 7s, they're 40s, numbers are important. So here in this story, over and over and over again, we get the number 3, having to do with magic that Medea performs, having to do with actions that Jason performs. Again, the triple tongue, the juice 3 times, the Trinity, exactly. I mean, there's so many 3s out there. Very, very important. So Medea begs. Okay, so they're going to go off together. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let's see. So, all right. So they go back home, and Jason sees his father, Aeson, who is very, very old, and says to Medea, "Oh, my wife, I owe you my safety, surely, and my return. Your gifts were greater than my hopes. How can I ask more than the all you have given me? But still, I ask one thing. If spells of yours can do it, and what spells of yours not do? And what can spells of yours not do? Take from me some of my years, and give them to my father." He wept, and Medea, moved by his devotion, thought for a moment of another father, her own, Aeetes, whom she had forsaken, shown little enough devotion to. She answered, "That is a wicked thing to ask, my husband. I cannot do it, and I would not do it, even if I could give anyone else a portion of Jason's life. It is wrong of you to ask me, and Hecate would never allow it. Never. But I will try to give you something better, greater than what you have asked for. By my art, not by subtraction of your years, I will try to add days to your father's life, if only Hecate will stand by me." So she waited 3 nights till the moon came full and the round circle shone brightly down on the world, and then she went out of the house in flowing robes and barefoot, hair streaming over her shoulders, all alone in the midnight stillness, while the birds and beasts and men reposed in deepest slumber, with never a stir in the hedges, never a rustle in the silent leaves, never a motion of air, only the glitter of starlight. And she raised her arms to the stars. Excuse me. And she raised her arms to the stars 3 times, and turning thrice sprinkled her head with quick caught running water, thrice called a wailing call, and knelt and prayed. O night, most true to mysteries, O stars, whose gold with the moon's silver shines and follows the fires of day, O Hecate, triple goddess, witness and helper of magic art and charm, O earth, provider of the herbs of magic, O winds, O little breezes, O streams, O mountains, O lakes, O groves, O gods of the groves, O gods of night, come, help me, help me, help me! You have before this, when I wanted, seen me make streams return to their sources, while their banks wondered. And you have seen me still the angry oceans, rouse the calm waters, drive the clouds away, or marshal them together. Exile winds, recall them! You have seen me break the fangs of serpents with my charms and incantations. Root up the rocks from the soil, root up the oak trees, move forests, shake the mountains, make earth tremble, call ghosts from graveyards. I love how she's giving like a magical resume. Like, here are all the things I have done with my magic. I can make the moon darken, the car of the sun turn pale at my singing, the dawn turn pale at my poisons. The flame of the bulls cooled at my order. With your aid, the necks bent to the weight of the yoke. You helped me turn the seed of the dragon, the savage earthborn brothers, to fight amongst themselves. You lulled the dragons to slumber he had never known. You brought the golden prize back to the cities of Greece. So she starts by, again, giving like a resume of her magical abilities. But then halfway through, she does acknowledge that, but these are things I did with your power, Hecate, that you gave me. You did this. And then it becomes what you did, because she's beseeching the goddess. What I need now is a potion by whose power old age may turn to the bloom of youth, regaining the early years once more. And you will give it. The stars flash bright in answer, and my car, drawn by the winged dragons, is ready and waiting. Oh, she is a chariot pulled by winged dragons. That's freaking rad. The car, as she was speaking, had descended from upper air. She stood there for a moment, stroking the necks of the dragons, and then mounted, shook the light reins, went soaring high, high over Tempe, toward lands she knew. All herbs that Ossa, Pelion, Orthrus, Pindus, and Olympus produced she studied, and the ones that pleased her she cut with the bronze sickle, or pulled up with roots still clinging to them. Many grasses she took from many riverbanks, among them an herb that gives long life, not yet made famous by what it did to Glaucus. But that, as someone a long time later said, is another story. We'll get to that one later. 9 days, 9 nights, her car went on its journey. 9 being 3 times 3. And she came with her dragon sleek and shining, in bright new skins, though nothing but the odor of the gathered herbs had touched their ancestral bodies. Come home, Medea halted. She would not cross the threshold, enter the door. She would not let her husband touch her. Under the open sky she built twin altars of turf, the one on the right to Hecate, the one on the left to youth. She covered these with vervain, with branches grown in the wilderness, and dug ditches near them, performed her rites, cutting a black ram's throat, soaking the ditches with his blood, with wine poured out of bowls, with milk still warm, and calling the gods of earth to come, and the dark monarch who, with his stolen bride, rules over the shades, to linger in the shadows, not to have... Okay, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot going on here. Ancient Viagra. Let's see. So the prayers appeased them, gods high and low. She told the people to bring King Aeson and his tired old body, full deep and lying like a dead man there on a bed of herbs. And she made Jason go far off, and made the household go far off, and told them not to look, not to profane her mysteries by watching. So these are secret mysteries and, a magical ritual. Can't watch this. They obeyed her, and she, with streaming hair, went stepping round the burning altar fires, and dipped her torches where the blood ran in the ditches, and she lit them with altar flame, and over Aeson sprinkled triple purification, using water 3 times, and fire 3 times, and 3 times sulfur. So again, another 9 set, 3 each of water, fire, and sulfur. Yes, secret mysteries. Unsolved mysteries. Let's see. And all the while the brew in the bronze cauldron boiled and frothed white. In it were root herbs gathered from Thessaly's lonely vales, and seeds and flowers, strong juices, and pebbles from the furthest shores of oceans east and west, and hoar frost taken at the full of the moon, a hoot owl's wings and flesh, a werewolf's entrails too, and the fillet of fenny snake, the liver of the stag, long-lived, the eggs, the head of the crow, whose years run for 9 generations. So this is her witch's brew, boiling, bubbling in the cauldron, and it has, you know, all sorts of animal parts and birds, and the entrails of a werewolf, which is pretty freaking rad. Yeah, it's hoarfrost. And there are even pebbles in there. All of these were in the cauldron, and 1,000 others, things without names, out of the world of mortals, and the barbarian woman stirred them well, mixing them top to bottom with a branch of olive, dry and dead, and the old dry branch, stirring the brew, turned green, and green leaves sprouted along its length, and suddenly it was loaded with olive fruit. Wherever the scum spilled over and the hot drops fell on the ground turned green. Soft grasses grew and flowers broke into blossom. And when Medea saw this, she drew her knife, cut Aeson's wrinkled throat, and let the blood run out, all the old blood run out, and filled the veins with the new mixture. Aeson drank it with his own mouth, and through his wound. And strangely and quickly, his beard was black again, no longer gray. His flesh filled out. The waxen complexion changed. The wrinkles all smoothed over. He walked as young men walk, and in his wonder remembered the forgotten self, that Aeson of 40 years ago. Bacchus had seen this marvel from the sky, and learning from it that his old nurses might be young again, implored Medea's aid, and the boon was granted. So we have a fun little note there at the end about Bacchus wanting this magic spell for his own old nurses. Yeah. So Medea does this bizarre ritual. It ends with her making this magical concoction in a cauldron. She has old Aeson come. She slits his throat, has all the blood drain out of him, and refills his body with this potion, and he is young again. And that is where we're going to stop today. That's not the end of the story, but it is where we are going to stop for now. Yeah, so some kind of rough stories today. Heavy. Lots of punishments going on. Don't boast to the gods, even if you are just as talented or potentially even more talented than the gods, even if you are luckier than the gods, even if in some ways you have more than the gods, keep it to yourself. Don't boast. Don't tell people. Certainly don't tell people, look, I have more than the gods. You should worship me, not them. Don't do stuff like that. Yeah, especially if you are actually more talented than the gods, which, as it turns out, some people are. Let me get rid of this bird so I don't forget. Bye-bye, bird. Cool. All right, so this has been Mythology Monday. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. We are, let's see, about halfway through. I always mean to get the book and actually look ahead and see what I want to read or what I want to skip over, but I never end up having the time to do it. We'll see. We will continue with this on Thursday as well. I don't want it to drag on too long, and there are so many other cool mythological things to read and talk about in the future. So what else is happening this week? Well, I will say today today, Jessica and I return to Dune on our regularly scheduled time and day. Monday, 5 o'clock Pacific time, 5 p.m. We will be continuing on with Dune. I cannot promise how much of Dune we will actually read. I cannot promise if it will be in Pig Latin, in Jessica and I alternating every word to read it, or any of the other shenanigans that we got up to last time. I can promise you that it will be entertaining, and that's about it. Oh, thank you, Demon Blight. But yes, so Dune today. Otherwise, I think I'll be on normal schedule this week. As long as everything in this world continues to be whatever our current normal is. Otherwise, go vote. If you have a chance to vote early, please vote. We have our ballots. We got to fill them out and go drop them off at the appropriate place. But yeah, please vote. I mean, if you're here in the United States, it's really important. Please vote. That's what I'm going to leave you with. That's my message. Please vote. And stay safe. Stay inside. Wear your masks. Be clean. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you all later today. Jessica Nerdy is the Twitch channel. 5 p.m. Pacific. Reading Dune. All right, folks. Thank you for joining me on Mythology Monday. I enjoyed it. And I'll see you later. Okay, bye.